They say you don't notice the moment things change until later, until you're walking home and the streetlights feel different, or the air carries a weight you can't explain. For me, it started in a coffee shop I didn't even like. It was just the closest place to campus, the one with too bright lights and mismatched mugs that never seemed fully clean. I came in most mornings, laptop under my arm, pretending to study while really just sitting with the noise of other people. It made the silence at home feel less sharp. That morning, I'd been nursing the same cup for an hour when she walked in, my friend's mom. I knew her in the way you know adults who float around the edges of your life. A smile at the door, a polite, "How are you?" when I crashed at his place. Mid-40s, maybe, hair pinned up carelessly, the kind of presence that felt both easy and untouchable. She spotted me before I had the chance to look away. "You again," she said, tilting her head like she was already amused. I smiled back, awkward, caught. "Guess I'm predictable." "Predictable's not the worst thing," she said, sliding into the line. And then, just as if it cost her nothing, she added, "You're cute when you say it like that." I don't think I answered. I was too busy staring at the condensation sliding down my mug, pretending it was suddenly fascinating. When she finally sat across from me with her coffee, it wasn't planned. There were empty tables, plenty of space. But she placed her bag down, unwrapped a napkin, and asked, "Mind if I join?" I shook my head too fast. "No, yeah, of course. Please." Her laugh was soft. Not mocking, just noticing. She folded the napkin into neat squares while I tried not to stare at her hands. Slim fingers, a ring she no longer wore. I wondered if she'd taken it off that morning or years ago. We talked about nothing. The weather turning too quickly, how the bus always ran late on Mondays. She remembered my order without asking. "Vanilla latte, right?" "Always with too much foam." The way she said it made me feel like I'd been caught again, but this time in a good way. Like maybe being seen wasn't as dangerous as I thought. The coffee shop around us blurred into its usual chaos, clattering cups, the hum of grinders, someone's phone buzzing too loud. But with her across the table, I felt steadier, and also more exposed. She leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly, and gave me a smile I couldn't read. "You know, if you keep looking that shy when I call you cute, I might just kiss you." It was a joke. Obviously. A throwaway line, said with a wink, casual as stirring sugar. But it landed in me like a stone thrown into still water. Ripples reaching places I hadn't known were there. I laughed, too late, too thin. "You're dangerous." Her eyebrow lifted. "Dangerous, huh? That's a new one." We didn't talk much after that. She finished her coffee slowly, glancing at her phone but not really checking it. I folded and unfolded my straw wrapper until it tore in half. When she stood to leave, she rested her hand lightly on the table, close enough that I felt the shift of air. "See you around," she said. I nodded, but the words caught in my throat. Later, walking back alone, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot your jacket. Come by later. I'll hold on to it." Her name wasn't on the screen, but I knew. And just like that, the streetlights felt different. Her text had been an excuse. I knew it the second I saw the message. I hadn't left my jacket. I hadn't even worn one that morning. But still, an hour later, I found myself outside her door, shifting my weight like a kid about to knock on the principal's office. She opened before I could. "Thought you'd never come," she said, leaning against the frame. And there it was, my jacket, folded neatly in her hands. I couldn't remember if I'd owned it yesterday, but somehow it felt like it belonged to her now. Inside, her house was warmer than I expected. Lived in. A blanket draped across the couch, a half-read book face down on the coffee table. Nothing staged. She set the jacket down and headed toward the kitchen. "Tea? Coffee? I only have the cheap stuff." "Tea's fine," I said, though I rarely drank it. The kettle filled the silence while I studied the way she moved. Casual, no makeup, hair falling loose from its pins. Something about that felt more dangerous than the wink in the cafe. When she handed me the mug, our fingers brushed, and I tried not to react. She noticed, though. Her eyes flicked up, steady and unreadable. We sat. The couch was too soft, pulling me toward her side. She didn't shift away. "Your friend." She paused, then smiled faintly. He never brings people over. Except you. I shrugged, buying time with a sip of tea. Too hot. It burned my tongue. Yeah, well, he probably thinks I eat all his snacks. Her laugh came low, almost reluctant. Then quieter. He used to eat them with his dad. The room seemed to fold in on itself. She hadn't meant to say it. I could tell by the way she smoothed her hand across the blanket, like erasing words from air. I didn't know what to do with that kind of truth, so I just sat there, holding my mug, pretending steam was interesting. Finally, she looked at me. Sorry, you didn't come here for that. It's okay, I said too quickly. Then softer, I didn't come here for a jacket either. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than felt safe. Then she looked away. The silence stretched, filled with all the things neither of us was supposed to name. The age, the friendship, the fact that this couch had probably been a family couch once. I told myself it was nothing. Just tea. Just a jacket. Just a woman being kind to the awkward kid next door. But my mind kept building scenarios, her hand reaching for mine, her leaning closer, her saying my name like it meant something. I shoved the thoughts away, embarrassed even in the privacy of my own head. She changed the subject, asking about classes, professors, the paper I kept putting off. I answered honestly, but the words felt thin. What mattered wasn't what we said, it was the way she listened. Not distracted, not polite. Just listening. Somewhere in the middle of a story about my failed attempt at cooking, she rested her hand against her cheek and smiled. Not at the punchline, but at me fumbling through it. That smile stayed with me longer than it should have. When I finally stood to leave, I half expected her to remind me of the jacket again, to anchor me with some small reason to come back. Instead, she just walked me to the door, hand resting lightly on the frame. Thanks for the tea, I said, my voice catching on the word thanks. She tilted her head, studying me. You're easier company than most people your age. I wanted to ask what that meant, if it was a compliment or a warning. But I just nodded. As I stepped out, she touched my sleeve. Not enough to hold me, just enough to stop me for a breath. Don't let the tea get cold next time, she said. It was nothing, really. A small joke, a passing touch. But walking back, I felt it like a mark on my skin. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time wasn't planned. I was coming up the stairs with a bag of groceries when she stepped out of her door, fumbling with keys. We froze for half a second, like we hadn't already been sharing too much silence. Need a hand? I asked. She shook her head, then glanced at the bag cutting into my fingers. You look like you do. Her smile was quick, almost guilty. She reached out and relieved me of the heavier bag, carrying it inside before I could argue. I followed, awkward in the doorway until she waved me in. The place smelled faintly of laundry detergent and citrus cleaner. Sunlight pooled across the kitchen table. She unpacked my groceries like it was the most natural thing, setting bread on the counter, lining apples in a bowl. You don't eat enough real food, she murmured, half to herself. College boys never do. I wanted to tell her I wasn't a boy, that I noticed the way her sweater slipped down one shoulder, that her hair had strands of silver she didn't bother hiding. But the words stayed stuck. We worked in silence. My hand brushed hers when we both reached for the carton of eggs. She pulled back too fast, almost dropping them. Sorry, she said, voice low. It's fine. But it wasn't. It had felt like something, like leaning over a cliff edge. Before I could steady myself, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. A knock at the door. Her son's voice. My friend. Mom? You home? She stiffened. I froze. She pressed a finger to her lips, barely breathing. The air between us thickened. Another knock. I'll come by later, he called, footsteps fading down the stairs. Only then did she exhale. She leaned against the counter, eyes closed, hand pressed flat against the wood like she needed to hold on. I shouldn't have, she started, then stopped. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and unsure. It's not what you think. I didn't think anything. I lied. My pulse was still hammering. Her laugh was small, strained. You always say less than you mean. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The silence stretched again, heavier this time. She looked at me as if trying to decide whether to push me away or pull me closer. I shifted my weight, every nerve pulled toward her. She reached for my arm. Light, tentative, fingers brushing the fabric of my sleeve. Not a grip, not even a touch that lasted more than a second. But it left heat behind. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. My breath caught, the space between us narrowing. If I leaned in, even slightly. But she stepped back first, folding her arms like armor. You should go before he comes back. I nodded, though every part of me resisted. At the door, I glanced back. She was still watching me, lips parted like she wanted to say something. She didn't. And maybe that said everything that it happened on a Wednesday evening, ordinary as any other. I'd been walking back from class, headphones dangling but no music playing, when I saw her sitting on the bench outside our building. A grocery bag rested at her feet, the kind that cut into your palms if you held it too long. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but something deeper, like she'd been carrying silence for too many years. Need a hand? I asked, my voice too soft. Her head lifted, and for a second, her smile faltered. Then it came back, practiced but thin. I thought you were avoiding me. I sat beside her without answering, close enough to hear the rustle of the bag when she nudged it toward me. I wasn't. She studied me, eyes narrowing, then looked away. You're a bad liar. We sat in that half-light of dusk, street lamps not yet on, the hum of cars distant. I wanted to fill the silence, but my words felt small compared to everything unsaid. Finally, she broke it. He asked about you today. My stomach tightened. Who? My son. Her hands folded over each other in her lap. Wondered why you hadn't been around. I swallowed hard. What did you say? That you're busy. She hesitated. It wasn't a lie, was it? I shook my head, staring at the ground. I didn't want to make things complicated. Her laugh was quiet, but sharp at the edges. Too late for that. The grocery bag shifted when she leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Her voice dropped, barely above the street noise. Sometimes I forget you're his age. You don't feel like it. The air between us tightened. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I knew, or thought I did. Instead, I said, you don't feel like you're. I stopped, heat creeping up my neck. The number sat in my mouth like a weight I couldn't speak. She turned, her gaze steady now, as if daring me. Old enough to be your mother? I flinched at the bluntness. She didn't. You are, I admitted. My voice cracked, thinner than I meant. But I don't. Her eyes softened, the kind of soft that's more dangerous than anger. Don't what? I wanted to tell her. That I didn't care. That I thought about her laugh in the coffee shop, the way her hand lingered on my sleeve. That every moment since had felt like stepping closer to a line I wasn't sure either of us could afford to cross. But my chest locked up. Words tangled. She sighed, leaning back against the bench, gaze fixed on the sky turning violet. Do you know what scares me? I shook my head. That I like having you around. She said it evenly, like reading from a page. More than I should. Her confession sat there, raw and calm. No drama, no tears. Just truth dropped between us like a stone. I stared at her profile, the silver in her hair catching the last light. That doesn't scare me, I said, barely audible. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I didn't glance away. The world narrowed, just the bench, the weight of her words, the gap between us. My hand twitched, wanting to close it. Her breath caught. She noticed. For one suspended second, we leaned into the silence, into the gravity pulling us towards something irreversible. Then she whispered, "What are we doing?" The question hung there, unanswered, maybe unanswerable. And we stayed that way, half turned toward each other, every inch of air charged, waiting for someone to move first. The next few days stretched longer than they should have. I didn't see her on the stairs, didn't hear the faint shuffle of her radio through the thin walls. No coffee shop, no casual forgot-your-jacket messages. Just absence, loud and deliberate. I told myself I was imagining it, that she was busy, that nothing had really changed. But I knew. Something had shifted on that bench, and she was pulling back. On the fourth day, I caved. I stopped outside her door, groceries in hand like a half-excuse, and raised my fist to knock. My knuckles hovered, never touching the wood. I stood there too long, feeling stupid, until the sound of footsteps in the hall made me retreat. That night, I heard voices inside her apartment. A man's voice, low, steady. I froze outside my own door, straining to catch fragments through the wall. It wasn't laughter, exactly, but something softer, familiar. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I spotted her leaving early, coat pulled close, hair pinned tighter than usual. She didn't look at me. Or maybe she didn't see me at all. Later that day, my friend, her son, found me at the campus library. He dropped into the chair beside mine, eyes heavy. "She's been different lately," he said. My throat went dry. "Different how?" He shrugged, restless. "I don't know. Just quieter. She's been seeing my dad again, maybe. I caught him at the house the other night." The words hit like cold water. I didn't know what to do with them, whether to feel relieved, betrayed, or foolish. "She'll figure it out," he added, already pulling out his laptop. Conversation over. I stared at the blank screen in front of me until the letters blurred. That evening, I walked past her window. The curtains were drawn, but a faint light leaked through, warm and steady. I thought about knocking. Thought about asking if she wanted company, if she needed someone to carry the silence with her. Instead, I kept walking. Days blurred. She returned the grocery bag I'd left behind, folded neatly, placed outside my door like a boundary marker. No note. No explanation. Just fabric holding more weight than it should. I almost texted her. I typed out a message. Did I do something wrong? Then deleted it. Another. I miss our talks. Deleted again. The words felt too heavy to send and too fragile to hold. So I let them sit in drafts, unsent, a ghost of something almost real. When I finally saw her again, it was in passing. She was leaving the building just as I was coming in. She carried herself differently, straighter, sharper. "Hey," I said, too quiet. She gave me a polite smile, the kind meant for strangers you don't plan to see again. "Hey." And then she was gone, the scent of citrus and laundry trailing behind her, leaving me in the stairwell with words stuck in my throat. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The kind of pause where you don't know if the next word will heal or cut. So I waited and waited, but the bench stayed empty. The coffee shop, too. It wasn't planned. It never was with her. I was coming back late from class, the hallway dim except for the weak light above the stairwell. Her door was cracked open, just enough that I could hear the faint clatter of dishes. I should have kept walking, but my feet didn't listen. I knocked softly. She looked up when the door swung wider. Hair loose, sweater slipping from one shoulder, a dish towel in her hand. For a moment, she seemed startled. Then she stepped aside, wordless, letting me in. The kitchen smelled faintly of ginger and detergent. She'd been cooking something simple, rice, maybe, but it sat cooling on the counter, untouched. "You're late," she said finally, as if I'd been expected. I shrugged, eyes catching on the folded grocery bag still on the counter. "I didn't know if you wanted me here." Her breath caught on something. Frustration, maybe, or relief. She set the towel down, leaning back against the counter. "I thought it was better if you stayed away." "Better for who?" My voice cracked. She flinched. Not much, but enough. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. Finally, she spoke. "He told you, didn't he? About his dad?" I nodded. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "I can't invite you into that. Not when I don't even know what I'm doing with my own life." I wanted to step closer, but I held still. "I don't care about that. My throat tightened, words faltering. "I just didn't want you to disappear." Her hands curled against the counter. "You think this is easy for me? You're 20. You're my son's friend. And every time I see you, she trailed off, shaking her head. "I feel something I shouldn't." There it was. The truth, raw and unguarded. I swallowed hard. "And I feel it too." The words fell between us, heavy. She closed her eyes, as if they stung. Silence again. I wanted to take it back, but I couldn't. My chest was burning, my palms damp. "If you don't want me here, say it. And I'll go. Just don't leave me guessing." Her eyes opened slowly. They were tired, glassy, but alive. She studied me like she was weighing 1,000 invisible scales. "I don't want you gone," she whispered. That single sentence was enough to undo me. My knees felt weak. I took one step closer, then another. close enough now that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her breathing shifted. My hand lifted, hesitated, then rested lightly on the counter near hers. Not touching, just close. She stared at that space, the half-inch between skin and skin. "Do you know what this could cost?" she asked, voice almost breaking. "Yeah," I said, "but I'm still here." Her laugh was shaky, more like a sob caught sideways. "You shouldn't be." "I know." The words hung there. And then, finally, she reached across that tiny distance and let her fingers brush mine. Just barely. A touch that lasted less than a breath, but said more than anything else could. Her shoulders dropped, tension spilling out of her frame. She looked at me, and for the first time since that coffee shop, she smiled. Not playful, not guarded. Just soft. Real. "Okay," she whispered. That was it. Not a declaration, not a kiss. Just okay. And somehow, that was enough. Time didn't stop after that night in her kitchen. The fridge still hummed. The kettle still whistled. The mornings still arrived too early. But something had shifted, quietly, like a picture frame nudged slightly crooked. We didn't fall into anything dramatic. No grand declarations, no stolen weekends. Just small changes. She let me stay a little longer when I came by. I started bringing groceries without needing an excuse. Some nights, we sat in silence with mugs of tea cooling between us, and the silence felt less like absence and more like company. The bench outside became ours again. Sometimes we sat there with the grocery bag between us, sometimes with nothing at all. Once, when the light was fading, she leaned her head back and said, almost to herself, "This is easier than I thought it would be." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her son never asked more questions. Maybe he noticed, maybe he didn't. Maybe he chalked it up to me being around less, or her being more settled. The truth sat in the spaces where no one looked too closely. Weeks turned into months. The sharp edges of guilt dulled. The awkwardness of that first coffee shop memory softened into something we could laugh about, though the line she'd thrown at me, "If you keep calling me cute, I'll kiss you," still sat in my chest like a stone. I turned over sometimes, remembering how it had cracked something open. We didn't talk about what we were. Not really. Labels felt too small, too fragile. But she let me carry her bags up the stairs, let me wash the mugs when the tea went cold, let me sit on the couch while she read with her legs tucked under a blanket. And every time she looked up and caught me watching, she didn't look away anymore. The best parts were the ordinary ones. Like the morning at 8:47 a.m., when I overslept and stumbled into the hall half awake, only to find her waiting outside my door with a thermos. "Black coffee," she said, pressing it into my hand. "Because you never remember breakfast." Or the time rain pinned us at the bus stop, both of us soaked through, and she reached for my hand without saying anything. No hesitation, no apology. Just fingers laced with mine until the rain eased. It wasn't perfect. She still had days where she closed off, where the weight of old things pulled her quiet. I still second-guessed myself, wondered if I was too young, too uncertain. But somehow, in the gaps, we found a rhythm. One night, we sat on the same bench where she'd asked, "What are we doing?" The air was cool, streetlights humming overhead. She turned to me, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. "This feels like the kind of sentence you don't rush," she said. I nodded, understanding more than I could put into words. She reached out, hand warm against mine, and that was enough. Looking back, I can't say there was one defining moment where everything settled. It was more like a series of small understandings, stitched together until they formed something whole. Not perfect, not dramatic, just ours. And I think that's why it stayed. Because love doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it comes like tea left on the counter, or a thermos of black coffee at 8:47 a.m., or the way a quiet smile can say, without needing words, "Okay." And her door, I never knocked.